Welcome to the Getting High on Leadership series featuring Paul Karasik. Paul is one of America's top management consultants helping leaders succeed. He is the author of 9 books, including Sweet Persuasion and Brilliant Thoughts and Provocative Questions. His insights appear regularly in major publications, and he is one of the most sought-after executive coaches. Paul founded the American Seminar Leaders Association and the Psychedelic Institute of Los Angeles. He is a popular speaker at national conferences and has been on stages across all 50 states and internationally. Paul's work addresses the question, how can we transform conflict in business into collaboration? With decades of experience in management, leadership, and psychedelics, he brings a unique perspective on personal and societal growth. In this series, we'll be discussing his latest book, Getting High on Leadership, The Leader's Guide to Higher Consciousness. We'll be exploring the concepts, techniques, and mindset required to revolutionize leadership. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this series. My name is Sanchez, your host, and we are joined by the author of the book, Paul Karasik. We're reviewing his book, Getting High on Leadership, spending some time in each section to discuss conscious leadership, the how and the whys of it. Today, we are talking about the section called Meetings Are Ceremonies, and this can be found on page 102. And as always, you can grab a book for yourself from the link in the show notes. And today's session is near and dear to my heart as an agile coach and Scrum enthusiast for business practices. Meetings and ceremonies are key. They actually call them ceremonies in this line of thinking. So I'm looking forward to this section for sure. Paul, where can we begin with the all-important meeting?
Well, I think let's talk a little bit about ceremony for a minute. And, what does that mean? And what's the difference between a meeting and a ceremony? When you think of ceremony, you think of ritual. You think of some sort of a preconceived pattern that's representation of usually something bigger. So you could have a wedding ceremony. So the representation of the ring and so on and so forth, the symbolization to live a life together, that's the ceremony. So there's physical things that are happening, but on the subtler level, there's a coming together and an agreement that this is a spiritual union between two people, and so on and so forth. So a ceremony has a spiritual context to it. It has, in general, you would say, it has a spiritual context. It doesn't have to, but a lot of times it does. And so you're coming together. What is the connotation underlying that makes this meeting a ceremony? And the connotation is we're all in this together. We're all experiencing the same consciousness together. This is a unified field. We're coming together, meeting for the purpose of discussing to get to a particular outcome. And there's an agreement. And the way that meeting can become successful is by agreeing to the basic premise that we all share consciousness, because when you have a meeting, there's the difference between a meeting and a ceremony is if there's 20 people at the meeting, there might be 20 different intentions. At a ceremony, there's only one intention. Marriage.
Definitely seems to unite the audience and the attendees behind that purpose.
Behind that one.
Something more ceremonial.
By one purpose, one intention, one direction, and meetings tend to be filled with conflict. So if we could start viewing it as a coming together, a uniting, an agreement to explore our universal consciousness and the possibilities for an outcome of that, then it changes entirely as opposed to going into the meeting with a personal intention, a personal outcome.
Right.
Because then if you have 20 people, you have 20 outcomes, everybody vying for their own particular thing. And what this
becomes a battle of the ego instead.
It's all ego, yeah. And it's just everybody just going around the table, flexing their I'm in marketing, and marketing, blah, blah, blah. I'm the head of sales, and sales, blah, 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 blah. And it just highlighting the differences with everybody as opposed to the sameness of everybody, the commonality of everybody. And
Yes. And I've seen companies go off the path. I mean, really just off the path on this and schedule meetings for everything, all kinds of things. You have meetings all day. You're in meetings constantly with the same people with different titles, but it's the same people all the time. And what it becomes, to be honest, is 90% of the meeting attendees sitting there quietly while the one person that actually had a question or needed to ask something does it, but under the guise of a meeting. So I think looking at like the daily work life in business, meetings can inundate and prevent any real work or innovation from being done by just locking everyone into this meeting process. Where if you have a ceremony, there are certain things that need to be brought up in the ceremony. There's a certain way you begin it and end it, certain ways that you address the different departments that need to be addressed, and ways that you would present any information that those departments need. So I think taking that lens and looking at your meetings as a leader and trying to make sure they're ceremonial or they have some aspects of this ritualized kind of cadence is good for your entire business. It's good for the bottom line, for your outcome and output, but also just for the sanity of your employees. Because when I get stuck on a day full of back-to-back meetings where it feels like I don't actually do my work until I've been in 6 hours of meetings, it's very hard to stay motivated or want to dig back in and be like, okay, now that those 6 hours are done, let me do my actual 6 hours of work. So I think that people are quick to throw a meeting on the calendar. And if you think of it as a ceremony and something that needs to recur and provide purpose or unite, that's a good way to maybe filter some of those out or combine a few or realize when maybe your team could benefit from fewer.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Rob. It's a matter of taking the good things out of a ceremony, right? So what if we start with the meeting with the coming together and the unification? We have a beginning, we have a middle, and we have an end, and that create this so-called container for commonality and collegialness and cooperation. And because when you go to it, let's just use marriage as a ceremony, everybody's united. Everybody at that event is celebrating the union of these two people. There's no separation. There's no bad will. They brought gifts, in fact.
And if the caterer is late, you're not standing up in the middle of the ceremony to express your feelings about the caterer being late, right? It's a ceremony. It's not time to talk yet. The caterer's late. Hopefully they get here on time, but the bride is here. Now's the time to do XYZ instead of whatever the ego may be pulling you into.
Yeah, that's a good point. The ego in a ceremony is subservient. The ego is, and we've talked about this a lot, and that's the issue that's the obstacle to consciousness is the ego. The ego is the total lack of consciousness. It's in the dark. It's separate. It's not part of the main field. It's unique, and that's what we want in a meeting is a coming together, an agreement on what our intention is, what this meeting's about, what we want to get out of it when it's done. What are the takeaways? Right. What's the ideal outcome?
I know we're staying very abstract with most of our advice. Something that is not abstract is have an agenda for the meeting. And now that meeting is automatically more ceremonial than it was before you started it. Just knowing what you're going to talk about when at least pulls it into that ceremony
Mm-hmm.
space almost immediately without doing very much other than saying, okay, we'll have a quick intro, then we'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about XYZ, then maybe we'll have breakout session, and then we'll close the meeting. That's going to get you thinking in along those lines of you're gathering all these people for that intent to reinforce some vision that you have as a leader or reinforce some need that you have as a business or in your family. So use that time wisely, right? Ceremonialize. I don't know if that's the word, if that's a word or not, but I think ceremonialize your meetings by providing that structure. And it helps you as the facilitator or as the leader just as much as it helps everyone else knowing what they're getting into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's things you can take away from standard ceremonies that really work, like the idea that there is something that we're going to do together that's going to unify us, whatever that is. Like to have a unifying principle that's bringing you together to begin with that, and to focus on consciousness. That's really the secret to creating a meeting, making a meeting into a ceremony, is focusing on consciousness. And what is each person bringing to that meeting in terms of consciousness? Are they on their ego thing, or are they on the greater good for the most people and optimum outcome for the intention? Or are they strictly looking for themselves and how they're going to profit, how it affects them, and so on? So anything we can do to bring that together, and usually it's not a lot of tricky stuff. It's pretty basic, letting everybody share at a meeting, opening up their involvement, their participation, asking for that involvement, recognizing the validity and the wisdom that comes from people, and tapping into that. That's one thing you could do to create more of a ceremony, because ceremonies are always united. Everybody in the room is focused on it's a coming of age ceremony for a young woman or a young man. It's everybody's rooting in that. Everybody's in that consciousness of, wow, this is a human who's entering into adulthood. Let's celebrate that. And that's what makes ceremony so powerful. So finding those unification points when you come together as a group, as opposed to the differences between everybody, will create a ceremony. And then and you can create rituals around this stuff. We can get really creative. Start every meeting,
And
light a candle.
those
Yeah.
rituals then build a story, right? So
Yeah.
now your meetings and the very way that you communicate starts to become kind of serial in the way that a story would. Like in
Mm-hmm.
this episode today, we're talking about this section. Well, now you and I know in the next episode, we're talking about the next section. It starts to
Mm-hmm.
build on itself and kind of fall in place in that way. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, on the Scrum side of things, there are certain ceremonies, meetings that they advocate and support a team, any team trying to accomplish complex work, where it requires hard conversations and it requires intellect. Right? You can't just find the right answer. You have to think about it and
Mm-hmm.
talk about it. They use
Mm-hmm.
these ceremonies to facilitate communication across the group and make sure all the departments are heard and make sure really that the whole company knows why we're on this call at this point. And there's like takeaway points and a lot of good things around there that they're trying to bring and draw that awareness. And I think they're just batting around the word of consciousness. They hit all around it, but they
Yeah.
never actually call it for what it is. And I think that's something that you're adding here in this book, is you're labeling this kind of unknown
Mm-hmm.
universal aspect, and I think
Mm-hmm.
drawing some wonderful attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so much of a meeting is just external stuff. And as we've mentioned so many times, what's really dominating in any situation is consciousness, not the external. Yet that's the way meetings are approached. with complete focus on the external results, external outcomes. And the fact is that external is just a reflection of internal. So why not start the meeting recognizing the internal presence and the internal consciousness that's existing and the common consciousness that's amongst the whole group right in the beginning, and start to bring that into it. When you bring consciousness into a meeting, it changes the whole texture of the meeting. There's recognition of people. There's respect for people. It's not just what's the outcome, how many, how much, how big, how many type thing. It's feelings, it's emotions, it's optimism. It's all those magical, invisible ingredients that make an organization or a team so special are all invisible. It's not about wearing the same T-shirt or a hat or, a mission statement up on a wall. Those are all good things. They all have a certain amount of value. But what's really valuable, and what a real conscious leader has to begin to recognize, is it's the unknown. It's the hidden that's really determining. When somebody's sitting there in the meeting and they don't say anything and they don't contribute, and you walk by that, you've just made a big, big error.
What are you missing, or what new innovation did you just overlook by not prompting them for a response?
And what maybe you made a resentment, by not calling on somebody or whatever the case. You have to look at that. That's what determines your trajectory in terms of what you achieve, is what's going on internally. You have to dream big to achieve big. You have to think big to create big. And consciousness is as big as it gets. So we want to bring that conversation into every meeting. And I think from my perspective, like you, having sat through literally hundreds and hundreds of meetings, that I've said, what am I doing here? I'm really not adding any value. It's because it was, if you think about it, there was no recognition of consciousness. When can we get this done? Who's involved with the project? You guys are going to follow up on that. That's all
the manager side.
All the management stuff, exactly.
Yeah,
about
not
time
the leadership.
And place and stuff. And leaders manage people. Leaders lead people. Managers manage things. And you're going into a complete management role when you start getting into the management of things in terms of the project. Start with consciousness, and you don't even have to talk about the things.
That's a challenge right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't even have to, because you have conscious people that are aware that you don't have to tell them what to do, because they're aware. And that's where we want to get to in leadership.
The mountaintop. Well put there, Paul. I appreciate the wisdom here as always, and thank you to our listeners and viewers for joining us on this section and many others, hopefully, if you've been on this journey. If not, feel free to start from the beginning or pick and choose as any show or section titles catch your interest. As always, you can grab a copy of the ebook below, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Getting High on Leadership series. If you have any questions, you can comment below or send them in via email to paul@paulkarasik.com. Follow him on Instagram at PK_the conversation. Find out more at wholesalerinstitute.com and psychedelic-awakening.com. The Getting High on Leadership series is produced by Rob Sanchez and Apartment 113, which can be found at apartment113.com and followed on Instagram at APT_113.